2019. Yes, indeed. This is that magical time of year that we call after the holidays, right? It starts sometime about mid-November, right? When we start saying about things we need to do. Oh, after the holidays, huh? We'll get to that after the holidays. Well, guess what? It's here. It's after the holidays. Ah, yes, exciting opportunities. Well, this is the first regular service that we have in the new year. We had New Year's Eve and we rang in the new year Monday night. And in many cultures, including ours, there are these New Year's rituals that involve food. Do you know what I mean? Does anyone have a special food that they eat on New Year's Day or New Year's Eve? You know what I'm talking about? I remember years ago, I went to a New Year's Eve party that was hosted by a family from Venezuela. And they had a tradition that comes from Spain where you would eat 12 grapes at midnight. 12 grapes at midnight, one for each month of the year. It was supposed to bring good luck and especially prosperity. You know, these food rituals have a lot to do with ensuring a prosperous New Year. So 12 grapes at midnight. That was back in the day when I could still make it to midnight. We're lucky if we make it till 9 o'clock these days. And I have no idea what would happen if you ate those grapes before midnight. But of course, in this country, there's another tradition that comes from the South. You've probably heard of the tradition of eating black-eyed peas on New Year's Day. And actually, there's a little more to it than that. It's black-eyed peas and cooked cabbage, which sounds like a potent combination, which is... It's also supposed to bring prosperity along with other things, but you know, it's a little harmless superstition is all in good fun, and I think there's actually a practical application because what rituals like that are being used for is as a consciousness conditioning tool or an exercise. The idea is to kind of get us focused on starting the new year with a fun and positive intention, and mostly revolving around this word prosperity. And in Unity, we're not afraid of using the word prosperity, but we seem to use it in a very different way from the rest of the world. I've mentioned this before about these churches today that are built entirely around the idea that God wants you to be rich. It's called the Prosperity Gospel. Time Magazine did a whole article on it. The Prosperity Gospel, where God wants you to be rich and your wealth and your status and all your stuff is a symbol that God favors you. And so we end up with churches that literally look like shopping malls, pastors with fleets of helicopters and things like that. And again, they call it the Prosperity Gospel. Which kind of completely ignores what they really say in the Gospels, what Jesus really says in the Gospels, where he says basically give away everything, right? You know, you're supposed to stop storing up money and possessions. Now I really don't believe that Jesus wanted anyone to live in poverty, but he consistently pointed out the problems that arise when people are possessed by their possessions and their money. That's not how we define prosperity. The definition that I like to use comes to us from Eric Butterworth, and he wrote this wonderful book called Spiritual Economics, The Principles and Process of True Prosperity. Here's his definition. Prosperity is not just having a lot of money. It is having a consciousness of the flow of substance. The true prosperity consciousness is consistently open to the flow, attracts opportunities to give and receive, wisely directs the use of substance, and remains free from its burden. An important guideline. If you are worried about the money you have or don't have, you're out of the flow. Now, we all get worried from time to time about the money that we have or don't have. And the reason that we get worried is because we have these things called thoughts, right? We have these thoughts, and sometimes we get lost in our thoughts. And when we do that, we will make room for some of the negative stuff to take root. Now, that's not a judgment. It's not a guilt or shame thing. It's part of the human condition. It's what happens to us. Unity minister Gary Simmons has a way of describing this aspect of the human condition that I really like. It kind of reads like a Zen koan, but here's what he says. If you ever had not enough of anything, you know how difficult it is not to focus on what you don't have. Not enough can bring you to the edge of your resourcefulness and become a mirror unto your own sense of insufficiency. That's some good stuff. When we consistently approach life in terms of not enough, we are establishing a belief system. And in this case, it is a dysfunctional belief system which properly goes by the acronym BS, belief system. When I read Eric Butterworth's definition of prosperity, it brings me back to the idea that prosperity is a state of consciousness first and foremost. And developing that state of consciousness is first and foremost a matter of spiritual practice. And by spiritual practice, I mean that we are working with the intangible realm of ideas and values and things like that. The practice starts with this recognition of what we say in our 5 basic principles, starting with one presence and one power, the creative flow. Part of all life, part of all things, no separation. Each one of us is a part of that flow, is at the center of that flow, and that flow is at the center of each of us. And if it doesn't start and end with that affirmation, then it's really not a spiritual practice. So, when we're confronted with the BS voice in our head that says not enough, the practice is to shift consciousness. Step 1, we affirm that one presence and one power manifesting as our own experience of that flow. That flow that again is at the center of us and that which we are the center of. And then we step back and we ask ourselves, what are we going to do with that power? There it is. What are we going to do with it? The experience of not enough can indeed bring us to the edge of our resourcefulness, which means we have an opportunity to become more resourceful, creative, to put spiritual principles into action. But so long as we're stuck in not enough, we're blind to possibilities. We're blind to the opportunities that are there. Things which are always there if we are awake and aware and prepared. So this morning, I want to talk about an opportunity that has been presented to all of us here at Unity of Auburn as a community. This year, there's an exciting opportunity for financial growth, prosperity at hand for Unity of Auburn. Thanks to the generosity of an anonymous donor, Unity of Auburn will have matching funds available in 2019 to enable us to establish a more stable and prosperous future. Here's how it works. Every dollar in offerings that exceeds our monthly goal of $8,900 will be matched to a maximum sum of $10,000. That's for 2019. That's right. Now, a couple of things about that $8,900 number. First, that's not what it costs us to operate each month. It's much more than that. That is simply the amount that we need to bring in from Sunday offerings, mail-in offerings, and things like that. We have other sources of income that are basically fixed. Tenant rentals, programs and classes that we offer, those are part of the fixed budget. We need that additional $8,900 in offerings in order to keep the center running and open. And that is a minimum figure. That $8,900 figure represents the amount that it takes to keep the lights on and the doors open. So, you can see the opportunity here. This matching program provides an opportunity to do much better than just break even. The math is pretty easy. We have the potential to see a total of $20,000 over and above our minimum requirements by the end of 2019. So, here's what it would take. To reach that maximum matching fund figure of $10,000 in 2019 would require an additional $833.33 per month above our $8,900 monthly offerings goal. Based on an average attendance of 50 people per week, that's $4.17 per person per week to reach that additional figure of $833.33 a month, so that we exhaust the matching funds. In other words, in a 12-month time frame, this is a reasonable and very attainable goal. Now, what are we going to do with that? Well, here are three things that we could do with an additional $20,000. First of all, provide greater stability and flexibility in our annual budgeting process. We've had to be very creative as a board of trustees over the years to keep a balanced budget in place, and through a lot of hard work and many hours spent by our treasurer Sharon and by all of the board members coming together, we have managed to put together a balanced budget, even in the face of times when expenses were going up unexpectedly for reasons out of our control, or income was down for reasons that are often out of our control. So this will enable us to go from a bare bones budget to something maybe perhaps a little more visionary. It'll certainly take a little bit of the pressure off your board of trustees when it comes to the budgeting process, and that's a good thing. Now, the second thing it can do is to help us to set up a reserve fund, which is something we need because we own this building, and it requires repairs and ultimately improvements that are beyond our annual maintenance budget. Let me give you an example here. On the roof of this building, from front to back, there are 12 heating and air conditioning units. 9 of those are getting close to 20 years old. To replace just one would cost approximately $9,000. Now, we've managed to fix the ones that have gone out on us so far. That's usually about anywhere from $2,000 to $3,000 to replace any major parts. But eventually something is going to happen where perhaps the day will come when we cannot replace those units because they won't make the coolant anymore, or whatever that happens to be. So those are the kind of things that we have to be prepared for. Now, those are sort of the nuts and bolts things that we have to be focusing on. The third thing that we can do is a little more exciting. One of the other things that we could do would be to become a benefactor for a local community service organization. Now, we currently support such organizations by designating at least 10% of the proceeds of our biannual bingo fundraisers that we give to different organizations that we rotate through during the year. But this additional sum would allow us to propose specific projects that we would sponsor that would be carried out on behalf of Unity of Auburn. Now, we are still in the process of coming up with the details on what organization and what project that might entail, and we're going to be rolling that out as soon as we start getting the details coming together. This is happening quickly, and we'll let you know what that project might be as soon as possible. But I think you'll all agree that this is an unparalleled opportunity to witness what appears to be a modest increase in monthly offerings blossom into something that is amazing and inspiring. Getting back to my talk title for today, what is it that happens when preparation meets opportunity? This is it. Collectively, we've been practicing those spiritual principles that I mentioned earlier when it comes to prosperity and finances here at Unity of Auburn. First and foremost, we dealt with the reality of our financial situation, our income situation, without engaging in magical thinking, without engaging in lack consciousness, panic, fear, or any of those other brands of negativity. We stayed focused on our mission and our vision, and we found ways to make sure that we would continue to provide the programs and the services that are the foundation of that mission and vision. That's the foundation. And as a result, we had the flexibility and the prosperity that was required to deal with the challenges of life, the unexpected stuff that pops up like the Great Recession of 2008, which caused a lot of businesses and a whole lot of churches to close their doors because they didn't have that flexibility to deal with that inversion where expenses were the same and crept up and income dropped. One final thing that we've always tried to focus on here is an attitude of appreciation. Instead of looking at what we wanted to get rid of or fix, we stayed focused on the things that we wanted to see more of. We stayed focused on the things that we wanted to increase, because what we appreciate appreciates. Another way of saying that is an attitude of gratitude, which I'll be talking about a little more at the end of the month. But I think the lesson here is that gratitude and appreciation and practicing spiritual principles disrupts the negative thought patterns and opens us up to the flow of abundance in the form of unlimited possibilities and opportunities. Or, as the Greek philosopher Plato once said, a grateful mind is a great mind which eventually attracts to itself great things. Now, I'm sure that black-eyed peas, cabbage, and grapes are good for you, but I highly recommend a healthy prosperity consciousness based on those sound spiritual principles that we've been talking about for long-term results. So join me in knowing and affirming that we are in the flow and that our matching program for 2019 is about to get off to a flying start. A very happy and prosperous new year to all of us. See you next week.